173, the VeeCon 2024 recap. Today, I am blessed to be joined in studio by Flat Glass Joe Guzman, as well as Kado. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having us here.
Of course. Absolutely. Thank you for taking the 15 stories down into the purple studio to do this. I know the way up is going to be more difficult, but thank you for doing this.
The elevator is down right now, so yeah, we got to take the stairs.
So excited to jump into getting your takeaways from VeeCon the last couple of days, as well as yours, Kado. But before we do that, why don't we bring Patrick Fransco in? Patrick Fransco from iMagnet Management, as well as Window Film Pro's Facebook group and LinkedIn group. And he is somebody who has known Gary Vee for, I think he said 30, 40 years, I think, something like that.
A long time.
And basically before everybody knew who Gary Vee was, and he's somebody who's been to every single VeeCon, this being the third one. So I'm excited to get his takeaways. So why don't we bring him in? I believe he's joining us from Monterey Car Week.
Yeah, exactly. I'm joining you fresh off of a red eye. From last night, but it was great to spend some time with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So Pat, what I wanted to do was just right off the start, like take kind of off the cuff, get your bullet points as the takeaways, not just like going through the speakers and kind of taking the lessons that they shared, but taking the, the top of mind lessons that you feel like that hit home and those are actionable, or that's going to affect what I'm doing moving forward in some way or another.
Sure. By the way, I want to clarify. I've known Gary for 12 years, not 30. So just want to clarify that. But no, so I think the overarching thing that I'm always my takeaway anytime I have a chance to spend any time with Gary, and it came through again loud and clear this weekend, is the ability to put yourself in check, put your pride in check, and not get high on your own supply, and deploy humbleness, no matter what level of success you're at. I think it's one thing for somebody to go up on a stage and say that. I have personally witnessed that in Gary. When I first met Gary, he wasn't what he is now, not even close. In fact, when they first started VaynerMedia, they were borrowing conference room space from another company called Buddy Media, him and his brother, and there was one other employee. And now Gary's personal net worth is over 100 million, 9 figures. So the key takeaway, though, is the Gary I met back then and the Gary we saw this weekend, same exact person. No pride, 100% humble. And that has always blown me away. Like, even when he's by all measures accomplished what everybody would think would be, he would have the right to, push his chest out a little bit, things like that. He is actually taking on more of the servant role. And I mean, that guy probably worked harder this weekend than anybody. I mean, standing out in the sun for hours and hours on end to make sure he got a chance to say hi to as many people as wanted to say hi to him. And I just come away from that thinking, man, if he's deploying that kind of humbleness, what right do I or anybody else have to, it just puts me in check when I see that. And also,
I'm surprised to hear that your biggest takeaway is to tone down your ego, because you're not really a guy with a big ego. It is something I could see being a big observation from the last 3 days, given it is mind blowing how he made such an effort. And, while the whole event, Gary spent most of the time, all 3 days outside taking pictures, because it seems to me like he said, and everyone has heard him say, scale the unscalable, and he saw value in that one-on-one connection with everybody. So he scaled the unscalable and made it happen. I think that's tremendous and incredible, and I want to talk about it. But I want to know your business takeaways, your life takeaways, whether it be wellness and so on. Because I don't think the ego part of it really is something that is going to change how Patrick does business tomorrow, because you've never been a person that I feel has displayed an ego. So you know.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, but I think it's something we can all. Pride is something we can all. Pride.
Now
Pride.
Like, what's going on?
No, I mean, I think pride is something we all can slip into if we don't, take an active role in keeping it in check. And it might not be that you're over the top with it, but I think that, and maybe rightfully so. I think we all have the tendency when we've accomplished something, or, whether big or small. And I'm not saying a little bit of pride in what you've accomplished is a bad thing, but I think I feel like from a business perspective, it is the absolute killer of continuing to grow your business. And I think that, so that being said, I know you want me to get into more of a business related thing.
When you think of speakers, who was the first person that came to your mind?
I probably would say a couple different people. Inky, who spoke, and then I also would say Lewis Howes. I mean, there was a bunch of good speakers, but I think what came through from a business
what's your takeaway in one sentence?
From which one?
Inky. And then Lewis
Move
Howes.
Forward.
You get one sentence. Let's hear it. What's the takeaway for everybody?
From Inky, I would say move forward. No matter what you're dealing with, take that first step and move forward. I would say that is the biggest takeaway, especially when you get hit a punch, a gut punch. That's the time to really move forward. I would say that's what I took away from Inky. From Lewis, I would say, the idea of, I think we get the impression that sometimes to be in business, you sometimes have to have this tough outer crust and be a little bit of a tough businessman. And Lewis, I take away the idea that being vulnerable and having kindness is the superpower. I mean, if you really want to build the business, I mean, I would say there's no better example of that, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, than you, Erik. I mean, I think you have displayed that, and I think it's not only been good for everybody in the industry, but I think it's been good for you personally as well. I think it's completely genuine, but I think a lot of times people think kindness is going to leave you open to be taken advantage of, and I think that's a wrong narrative. So
thank you for saying that, and I very much appreciate it. And I would say like you said, I appreciate you saying it's genuine, and I feel like it came from a place of, originally, I think just hearing it from Gary, really, it came from a place of Gary and others, but mainly of Gary. But like, to your point, I think part of it came from a place of, this is how I want to live my life, and this is the right way to treat people. And that's like where that was the motivation behind it. And then what it turned into, like you said, was it wasn't a weakness. It wasn't a vulnerability. It wasn't this is how we're going to do it. And this, makes it harder. It was a strength. It's actually, like Gary says, it's an asset. It's actually not something that's when I get to this point, I can do that, or that sounds nice. It's do that. And that's actually like the best thing for your own self, your soul, the people around you. And you'll see that it will propel your business. You'll actually like your business. Like, everything will work out better. I truly believe that way.
100%.
And absolutely. But I think that's that's
life.
I think you exhibited that for everybody in the industry to see. I think Gary's exhibited that. Lewis has exhibited that. But it's completely counter to what the typical narrative is about business. You got to watch out for yourself. You got to make sure you don't get taken advantage of. You got to win, even if it means other people might be on the losing end of it. It's completely counter to everything we've been told about how to run a successful business. That's why it's so rare when you see it, to be honest with you.
I think it also plays into life itself also, because the narrative of life has always been buy a house, get married, have kids, retire when you're 65. And everybody there, the takeaway for me anyways, was you're young, you have one life, do it now, do what you want to do, quit your job, be happy, live life. Everything else will kind of fall into place. And so running a business or living your personal life, it's about just being happy and just going away from what our grandparents told us. And that's not doable.
That's
way.
funny you mentioned grandparents, since Gary brought up during the keynote this time that last time at the keynote, and I'll use his words. He was
Fuck
like,
his
you know, you
grandparents.
remember from my last keynote how I was saying fuck your grandparents.
Yeah.
So it's kind of just funny how you're like, you know, you have to, like, you know, you said it more
Yeah.
you know, more nicely than he
Uh-huh.
did. Patrick, I'm curious, was there any speakers that you remember that something they said changed your mind, that, you know, you went in to this and anybody you encountered or anything that you said, okay, that's either changed my mind or that's a brand new thing in my mind?
Trying to think if there was anything, I don't know that there was anything that I like maybe hadn't heard or read or anything like that, but I think it was just continuing to keep from a variety of different speakers, the idea that, don't delay. Like, the time is now to act. And I think that came through from a variety of people. And again, it's nothing I've not heard, but I think it came through numerous times through different speakers that, like, what are you waiting for? Like, you have no, you're not promised tomorrow. I mean, that definitely rings true with me, obviously, with what I went through the last couple of years, but you still can kind of slip into a mode to where you just sort of like, I'll tackle that next week. I'll tackle that next month. I'll do that 6 months from now. And, just the reminder that it's like, you're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're not guaranteed next week. You're not guaranteed 6 months from now. And not to be doom and gloom, but it's like, we live our lives as if we're guaranteed that those things are going to happen, and we're not. And if you take that into account, then the time to act, the time to chase your dreams, the time to do what you've been wanting to do is now. Not, right. I'll do that next year. I'll do that 6 months from now. I'll do that. Whatever that thing is, get started on it. As Inky said, take that first step. Like, it's not going to be everything at once, but you've got to start moving in that direction. Because I think, next thing you know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever could slip by, and you still haven't went after that thing. So I think that's a good reminder for me, and it's also a good reminder for everybody. Not that it's some groundbreaking thing that I'd never heard before, but I think it's so easy to slip back into, okay, I'm kind of busy. I'll get to that next week, or I'll get to that in Q4, or I'll get to that start of next year. And it doesn't happen. The time to start is now.
And that definitely came across, like you said, through many speakers, and also kind of the balance between getting started, making that first step, but also having patience and knowing that while you're not promised tomorrow, you may still have a long time to go. So have patience on the way. Was there anything that you can share that has come to mind in the last 3 days that you could share that's directly tied to your business or personal life, that you're like, this is some little change, big change, whatever it is, that like something very applicable that you're just specific to you or your business?
I think you actually said it yesterday. I know you were busting my chops, but it is something that came through to me. There was two distinct people on those stages.
Oh no, you're gonna share?
No, there was two distinct people that were on those stages that at one point in time, 12 to 14 years ago, we started in a very similar place. And I, through being very conservative, very pragmatic, have achieved some success, I'd like to think, and in life and in my career. But I probably have placed limitations on myself, because these same two people have accomplished, not even 10x, 100x of what I've accomplished. And that, to me, to your point, going back to my business, my life, whatever, is I think I've applied self-limiting belief systems on myself and on my business. And I got nobody to blame for that but myself. I'm not blaming. I'm just saying that really hits home with me, that it's like, you are where you are because you chose to be there, or you've taken a series of actions to put yourself there, and you have just as much chance to take where you're at and go to where you want to be. but nobody owes you anything. And in my position, in order to be safe and pragmatic and conservative, I've limited my ability to personally grow and to grow from a business perspective.
Pat, I gotta say, you fucking nailed it. And it's why I love you, because it was like you said, I was busting your chops, right? And I didn't give you the whole story. I kind of gave you, to me, like this comedic little jab, but you just put into words a lot of the backstory that was actually going through my head. And it was things that I was thinking really about myself. I wasn't really even thinking about you. The joke was more to me about myself, because, while it's safe to say, like, you should not live your life by comparing yourself to others, right? You're living
Correct,
your
yeah.
individual life, and there's many components to that life, right? You're not going to necessarily compare it. You could compare bank accounts, right? And just that's the ultimate thing, or income. Those are two different things, or possessions and so on, or family. And like, you can pick any of those metrics. And I think that's not a way to live your life, through comparison. However, in that environment that we're in an environment to grow. I felt like when I was looking at the different speakers that were invited there, I did put myself through those lenses and look at them through those lenses of saying, how did they get to this success? And how have I, without putting too much harsh judgment on myself, going like, well, like, I could consider myself successful. I'm extremely happy. But I also consider that if they're up there as a speaker, I kind of give them, I say they're more successful. I don't even have to really, we don't have to judge on anything else. I go, they're obviously affecting more people at some point at this event and so on. So I was looking at through those eyes and those lenses for exactly what you hit on the head, Patrick, to identify the self-limiting ways that you've maybe boxed yourself in through comparing yourself to those people. So I really love
and one thing that came through, I think, and if I'm going to be completely candid, is why do you build those self-limiting things? I mean, there was a lot of talks that if you were really digging in and listening, it came back to one of the central things is like, why did I build those walls? Why did I place those limits? Why did I act so conservatively? I think it's based out of ultimately fear of losing something that you have, reputation, money. For me, I've always been like, continue to move forward, continue to grow, but fearful of, like, a friend of mine who, is very wealthy, has a really nice house in Malibu and everything like that. If I could identify the difference between him and me, outside of the fact that his bank account has a lot more zeros in it than me, is the fact that at certain times in his life, when he believed in something, he was willing to push all the chips in, like everything, boom, all chips in the middle of the table. And, that's paid off for him really, really well when he really felt something deeply. And I'm more like, well, let me push like a tenth of my chips in. Same level of belief, but I'm not willing to go. I have not been willing in my career to go as all in. And that has been a huge limiting factor. And the root of that is fear of losing something that you have. And that doesn't just need to be money. That could be reputation. That could be all types of things. The fear of somebody making fun of you, like, what the hell is Pat doing? That's a stupid idea. Well, maybe it's not, but you don't want that ridicule. So maybe you don't go that route or something like that. And that came through in a lot of talks as well. A lot of talks that came through.
And fear was something that Gary had said. He goes, I was out here for 3 days talking to y'all, and basically all I heard from most of the people was fear in one form or another. And like you said, it's fear of loss of reputation, fear of monetary loss of time. And, to your point, Pat, like it's definitely not to say like, oh, you should have gone all in. Because for everyone that's like your buddy that went all in and has done well, there's thousands that went all in. For every one, there's thousands or millions that went all in and, maybe never recovered or whatever.
It doesn't always work out.
It doesn't always work out. So it's not about saying like, oh, where did I go wrong? It's about saying like, what are things that these people are practicing in their business and they're talking about that maybe are things that I have my own limitation built in place, whether it be putting yourself out there or whether it be being willing to network or make that contact, or what are those things where you go like, oh, that's a ceiling in my mind and that's a strength for that person, or they broke through that ceiling, you know?
Mhm.
So I think that's where to the point, that's where the critique came from, was simply like, how did they get so far in such a short
No,
amount of time? They didn't come
it's
from,
very,
you know.
well, Lewis, I mean, to share the one that you were kind of giving me a hard time on, when I first met Lewis, he was sleeping on his sister's couch, and we were both living in Columbus, Ohio. And what's that?
Nothing. No, we were listening.
Oh,
Oh, was he one of the speakers there?
and
Lewis, yes.
and
Okay.
he, and that was about 14 years ago. And sleeping on his sister's couch, didn't really have a job. Was starting to try to figure out LinkedIn and how to use that for his career. And we would have these get-togethers in Columbus called Linked Columbus, where we would get together typically at a bar or a restaurant and just sort of like as a networking group, if you will. And now Lewis has got a top 10 like his podcast is ranked in the top 10 globally. I mean, you could put it up there with name, maybe not, quite Joe Rogan, but I mean, his name would be in a similar ecosphere with regard to the people that he gets on the show, the number of listeners he gets and things like that. And him and I, you could have argued at that time, I was living in Columbus with my family in a 4,000 square foot house, making a great income. You could have argued I was in a much better position than Lewis was at that time. And he is many, many times axed what I've done in those 14 subsequent years. Not that what I've done in those 14 years has been a failure, but it's a significant difference what he's been able to accomplish and what I have.
Does this make you want to go chips in all the time now? Does it make you like realize I've been holding back so much and now I see this, so there's the proof in the pudding. I should probably take a little bit more risks.
I mean, I think there's a lot of variables to that. I mean, as Erik knows with a brand new baby at home, there's phases of your life where you're like, I mean, I had a young family at that time, and my number one thing is security for my family, security, I was, again, I don't want to use the word fear, but, because I don't know that it quite was entering my mind as fear, but my number one concern was like, I can't go to zero. Like I got 2 kids at home. I got, I couldn't afford, to go all in. It's one of the things I would say I would encourage people that are young and they're single and they don't have any kids. I don't want to say you should take undue risks, but if you're going to take major risks, now's the time to do it. You could always pick yourself up and dust yourself off and move on. There's, life has responsibilities, and I take those seriously. So now I have my oldest is going away to college this year, and I'm in a little bit different place. I'm in a place where I'm playing a little bit with house money, if you will. I could take a little bit more risks, but at that time, I didn't feel like I could do that. I felt like the downside is like, I got to feed my family. I got to, I got bills to pay. I got a family to take care of. My wife,
has to be
my
practical.
wife had decided to leave her career as a microbiologist to be a stay-at-home mom. So it was all on me. Like, this has got to work. Like, I got to make this happen. I mean, so.
And to be clear too, like the focus of Lewis House's talk, the way I heard it, at least when we're talking about levels of success and so on, truly the whole purpose of the talk felt like it was about how many people he's reaching and helping and, like educating or sharing with, and how big that reach is and how big that reach has grown to. I think he said his goal is maybe reaching 100 million people a week or a month.
Per month.
100 million per month.
Yeah, right now he's reaching like 50 million listeners a month, and I think his goal is 100 million.
And that was the theme amongst a lot of the speakers. The first one of the day, which the name escapes me, but I do have it in my phone. The title of the talk and the whole point was unreasonable hospitality. So like hospitality to an unreasonable level. And like, so when we're talking about these levels of success and so on, like, part of it certainly is money, because money is a part of being able to reach those people, right? Like you don't reach those people necessarily for years and years upon years and have the ability to do what you want if money's not some aspect in that. It has to be. But when we're talking about this level of success and so on, like the part that really stuck in my head was like, you know, to Patrick's point earlier, like seeing Gary and how he individually affected so many people at the show throughout, how he'd come by and say hi, how he would post and say, if you see me, stop me and say hi, how he stood out there in the sun for the whole entire day, all 3 days. And then, you know, like how Lewis spoke from his heart about, you know, affecting so many people and unreasonable hospitality and so on. So just to put into context for listeners, we're not talking about growing bank accounts. That was Bobby Altoff's talk. That was 100% about growing bank accounts.
Yeah.
There was nothing.
Which I would say that was the worst talk I heard all week. Was the one that focused on bank accounts.
I mean, talking, but
to be fair, it is her thing.
I was
Like,
looking for the sarcasm.
yeah.
I was waiting for a laugh. I'm a sucker for a laugh. I love laughing, and there was no laugh. I didn't get the laugh.
Yeah.
I was just confused why so many people got up after her and before Lewis Howes, because Lewis Howes got on stage and this mass exodus. I was like, who are these people that stayed
Coming
for her
Bobby
and left for him?
I did have a few people when I posted that story message me and be like, I love Bobby, but no messages for the rest of the people.
I understand loving her comedy and I understand loving her persona, but the talk just lacked. I felt like
value.
I don't know if she knew that there was people in the room. It felt like she didn't know there was an audience. And then it felt like she was speaking to her haters almost like, I'm a good mom. Yeah. And like, this is what my kids do, by the way,
when they're with me,
and like, I don't want them to ever have to work and like these things. And it's like, how do we, I guess it was on us to take it as homework and figure out how to apply that to our life. She's like, I want to be a private jet one day. I'm like, okay.
Oh, is this a girl from she does her own videos or like interviews?
One with the drink.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then the one right after is complete opposite.
It was so good.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe they sandwiched her in there to make you feel
the value.
Right. It's like when you have something like bitter before something sweet.
That's right. It's like the opening act versus
planned out.
Hey, again, I thought it was my least favorite talk of the entire session. But if we're honest, she just was saying out loud what a lot of people think internally about wanting money and things like, you know, I mean, the goal of being like, I'm saying anybody in this talk that we're in right now, but I'm saying she literally said the quiet part out loud. She said what a lot of people think inside, but she was just saying it out loud, you know?
Yeah, I guess
that'd be one takeaway from it. Probably the only one.
Yeah.
I mean, right.
Like if you're gonna find the positive out of it, that's it.
There was a little positive out of like she did share how like when she would make a piece of content, a great piece of content. I think this was valuable. Like she gave an example of a video that she made with Michael Bublé. She goes to meet him, and she said she had no shame. She would post the video. If it didn't get the amount of views she thought, even if it got 500,000 views, if she felt it could get 1 million, she would delete it, try a different caption, try different words in the video, and post it again. Now that sounds like something
that was good.
But she said she would do that sometimes up to 10 times in a day.
And not go to sleep.
And just keep deleting it, posting it again, keep deleting and posting again until it hit. And like, I want to say nobody that's listening to this has ever done that, especially with a video that hit 500,000 or whatever is comparable for your thing. Like if we got a video and it hit 500,000 views, I'm not deleting it to see if we get 10.
That's right.
Like, but now,
good call. I mean, that's a good call because that was a good takeaway that she kind of felt in her heart. This content is better than what the results are, whatever that is for your personal business or your social channel or whatever. And she was willing, because of that conviction, to continue figuring out a different way to do it. That was a good takeaway. I mean, thank you for bringing that up because that was a good takeaway from that.
We went through the negativity too, because she says that was one of the big things. She kept getting messages about why are you posting this video again with a different caption and over, like
because I'm making $200,000 a year.
Exactly.
That's why.
And that's what she said, right? And then and one of the questions, like, when did you first go viral? And she's like, I've been going viral. It was more like, when did the first time that I went viral and it caused me to gain an audience? because then she discussed the difference between a video that goes viral but doesn't necessarily provide any value. So an example she gave was she was, just testing out videos, and she would make a video like how to become a nanny, because she was a nanny. That's what she was doing before COVID. So she'd make a video how to become a nanny, and she would just kind of look for these little informative things that would get a lot of views, and it would provide her an income. Like Kado said, she said she was making $200,000 a year off of social media through brand deals before anybody really knew who she was. And then she had the content that actually built an audience, and then that's the game changer,
the foundation,
that pivotal moment of
And even at 200K, she said she was only paying $300 per interview.
Well, no,
right?
so and that's that's what I was gonna say. One of my takeaways from it, and I've actually just tried it. As soon as I posted her video that I took of her, she said that she would offer people $300 if you know somebody that can get me an interview with that person.
Okay.
I'll do it. So I posted in my story, hey, anybody that can get me an interview with Bobby, I'll give you $300. And she said that's all I had to offer people at that point. That was like the last money that I had was $300. So if you guys know Bobby, I'll give you $300 to get me onto an interview.
And Joe will match it. So that's $900.
So tag Bobby in
I'll
the comments.
I'll throw 300. I'll throw 300 in. We got 1,200.
That's $2,400 or 900. That's 1,800.
There we go. So $1,800 to
Dennis.
whoever can get me on a Bobby interview. There we go.
Done.
And that's how she made it happen. So we'll see if it works for her.
Okay. And we'll give 300 to Bobby, of course.
Exactly.
Yeah. She said she wanted to fly on a private jet one day. So that could be the ticket to getting her. And just say, would you do an interview if the travel from she lives in LA. So we could probably afford a helicopter from where she lives to the studio.
Right.
Because it's probably like 10, 12 minutes away. So it's like a sightseeing helicopter. And that might be enough to get her.
I mean, I think her last Canadian interview went pretty viral with Drake. So I feel like doing another one with another Canadian is like,
sure.
Let's try. Only one way to find out.
What does Kendra say? What is
Not like us.
So kind of go. I mean, I'm interested though, because you had asked me a couple of the questions. I mean, I'm interested in hearing some of those same answers from the other guy, you guys. I mean, what was your most meaningful takeaway? Things of that nature. Because I think the cool thing about VeeCon is I think 10 different people can go there, listen to different speakers, and walk away with 10 different things. I mean, depending on what space you're in and what you need, things like that.
For me, I was only there 2 days, but the ones that I was able to sit on, same thing, like you said, just stop holding back. That fear that everybody holds is a big thing. And I think one of the first speakers was, goddamn, I had her name here, Ashley Graham. Graham.
Yeah.
Oh, Graham. Sorry. The model. And one of the things with her, she kept telling her agent, like, hey, I want to do my own line. I want to do this. And the agent
she wanted to do her own lingerie line. She was part of like another brand's lingerie line, right? As like a model for it. And, but she wanted her own line.
Independence.
Right.
And that was one of the things that she got a lot of pushback from her own agent. And it took, I think, a year, she said, until she finally just said, you know what, we're doing this. This is it. And either you're a part of it or not.
She messaged the company that she had been working with directly and asked and told them directly. She went around her agent and she went directly to the company that was, paying her to promote their brand. And she said, we're going to make our own brand. So if you want to make it for us and be partners, cool. If not, we're going to go with another partner. And then after they said, absolutely, she had to then tell her agent, hey, by the way, and she said, my agent said, I'm sorry, I didn't believe in you as much as you did. And she said, obviously, I'm not with that agent anymore. And, you could have stuck with that agent for 10 or 20 years. It could change her whole career.
The opportunity's lost.
Now, Joe, is there a way that you kind of, because that obviously resonated you since it's the first thing you brought up. Is there something in your business or life that you feel like, oh, okay, that kind of like, that's something that maybe I've held myself. I don't know if like lingerie or like anything you wanted to do, but like, is there anything in your life that clicked with that you're going to apply?
I feel just general life too, anything you do, but even like for me, it's a little challenging
for a specific,
because
Joe.
No. I know.
Not
but
a general life thing.
I think he does
Specifically,
want
is
to
there
do
any-
the
And if there's
lingerie.
not, you can go, no, there's not. I haven't been able to find an application for that.
I'm starting an underwear line, and I
All
don't want
right.
to say nothing just yet.
Is there
but-
anyone else who stood out to you, that or another one that you just felt like, okay, I got that nugget and this applies to my life in this way, or this is something that I'm gonna make a change, or
No, they all kind of had a similar message, I feel.
so would you
know,
say it was like a
so
shower, you feel good after it, but
pretty
like you're gonna
much.
have to do it again to keep it going? Like
Yeah,
it's
it was my
motivational.
First one.
It
gotta
left
do
you
a
with like a
second.
fire.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. Definitely motivated though to do more for sure, and more chips, in rather than just a certain percentage. So,
Because you're young.
well, not so
But you
much
have a
young, but
family, so it's
I have a
very
family. So,
important.
like what Patrick touched on earlier, it's a little challenging sometimes to really give it all you got into something, because you need to know how to. You got a family time. You need this, you need that. And
So what about this experience actually changed that for you? Because hearing people just say it, was that enough to just change that? Given
I think putting more time into it and strategically planning things out, as opposed to just kind of being loose and wild, I feel at sometimes.
undisciplined, I think would be what
Yeah,
the word
yeah.
you're saying. Loose and wild.
Yeah.
So
that's
adding
one
more
way.
discipline to your business
For sure.
to make the steps and think about it, not just go with the flow for the check. Because
Yeah.
like it's
Chasing-
different
yeah.
between surviving and thriving or strategically planning and moving forward. Is
Right.
that
Yep.
Yeah?
100%. Yeah.
Kado?
Nailed it.
What about
Well,
you?
Well, I want to just, can I say something before you say what you're going to say, Kado? Off of what Joe said?
Definitely not.
No, I was just going to say one of the things I think, and I think you touched on it, Eric, but I think it deserves a little clarity, is I also feel like while money is important to all of us, we need money to operate. We need money to function in society. Money, in my opinion, one of the things that comes through too is the people that are really successful and have happiness in their life and seem to really be in a good spot. They're doing what they're doing. Money is a byproduct of what they're doing. Money isn't the target. Like they're doing what they want to do and they're doing something they're passionate about, and money's coming along. I think money in and of itself, while important, is a horrible target. If you say, I just want to make more money, at some point in time, if you've ever achieved a decent amount of money, you realize that at some point in time, that at least for most people, I think that wears thin. That can't be it. The goal can't just be the accumulation of money, in my opinion.
Kado? What did you take away that felt actionable to you? What stood out to you?
So I think there's like two sides to what I learned over the last 3 days, and there's like the business side and the personal side. So the personal side, I've been listening to Gary Vee for the last 7 years. He's changed my life. He's why I'm sitting in this podcast room right now in LA, because I learned over the last 7 years that I'm young, I can make mistakes, I can learn, I need to do what I'm like makes me happy. And I've said this to so many people, and I feel like what I've learned personally over this is just, I'm on the right path. I'm doing the right thing, is, solidifying my vision is what the last 3 days gave me from hearing this from everybody else. And like, because realistically, it's just repetition. It's just like setting your alarm, going to the gym, just repeating those basic skills of, following your dreams, doing what makes you happy, doing this, and the rest will just kind of fall into place. I am the byproduct of exactly doing the blueprint of Gary Vee's advice. So personal life, that's done. Like I'm going to continue down that path, add a couple little, changes to it here and there. And then business wise, I mean, obviously working for Tint Wizdom now, it's literally the first speaker. Generally when I attend any kind of training, speaking, anything like that, it's within like the first hour or couple minutes that I get like a little piece of advice, or I learn something that I'm like, this is worth every single thing. And the first speaker was the restaurant guy. So putting all of your attention into the people that feed your business and making their experience unlike anything they've ever experienced in their lives. Like he went from, a 3-star, 2-star, something like that, like a kind of not a nobody, to a 4-star, the top 50 in the world, to working his way up to #1 in the world restaurant because of the way he treated people. He's like, I don't know if my food was really any better from when I was the 50, but what got us to top 1 was the experience of people and, you know, caring and listening and being present in the moment. And, you know, I think that Tint Wiz is a good indication of how that, you know, is a blueprint to what works, is just being kind, being authentic, caring about people. And there's no backstory. Like there's nothing. This is what it is. That's it. Take it as you will.
And the person we're talking about, his name's Will Guidara. If I pronounce it right, it's Guadara. And his talk was Unreasonable Hospitality. And one of the things that I thought, you know, really stood out to me was, well, first of all, to put it into context, you know, he was brought into this restaurant to make it better. He ends up landing on a top 50 list. But then he finds out he's number 50 and it crushed him. So, you know, that's something where, like, you know, that's something in itself right then and there. You're top 50, you're number 50 in the world, but to you were the number 50, so you're not number 1, so you feel fucking horrible. So he went through that process. And then when he came out of there, he said, I'm going to focus on the experience, not just focus on the food, because these other people are basically always focusing on the food, and we have great food, but let's focus on the experience. And then basically what he said was, you know, you can't limit yourself and think through the idea of only what's scalable. He said, you know, that will, you know, kill a business essentially if you only think through what's scalable. And alternatively, what you can think, he said, was try to, you know, he looked at it as like, how can I affect these people on an individual basis, and then put systems behind it. So it may not be scalable, but he could put systems. So an example was, after a time had gone by, they would then collect and go, okay, out of all the different unique situations that we ran into, how many of them were engagements? How many of them were birthday parties? How many of them were hot dogs? How many of them were this and that? And then through there, they can kind of put some systems in place to make it a little less on the fly every time. And that's a great process. I think that you could apply to anything, even if we're not talking about like extreme hospitality. It's just try something, try it in its simplest form. Don't try and master it and polish it and think about how it's going to be 20 years from now. Just try it in its most simple form, and then adjust and adjust and adjust and find where you can make it flow better. Don't think you're going to put it together and engineer it right the first time, you know? And I think that stood out, and that's how he inched his way to being the #1 restaurant in the entire world.
Yeah. I mean, what really stood out, like, that makes it so crazy, is the fact that he overheard, I think what started it was, he overheard one of his diners that, you know, they had never had a New York hot dog.
They were on a trip from another country just to eat at all the finest restaurants. They had eaten at all the
foodies. Yeah.
Right. They were road foodies. They had eaten at all the absolute best restaurants. And then he overheard them saying, you know, the one thing we didn't eat after everything great was just a regular street hot dog.
We're about to leave.
Right.
And so he goes out on the street, grabs his hot dog, goes inside, they cut it up, make it look fancy. And that was, he's like, I've never seen someone react to any kind of food, the best kind of food. He's like, I could have brought out a bucket of caviar and they would not have reacted the way they did with the hot dog.
A $2
and that alone is like the craziest thing to me, of like how much something so little can mean so much to so many people.
And those are things that you can apply all the time when you're present in your business. So when you're talking to somebody on the phone, when you're in their house, if you're doing consultations, when they're bringing their car to you and you're seeing maybe something in their car or whatnot, anything, look for those little opportunities to have that little special interaction. Joe, I know you like to clog people's toilets when you go into their house to tint it.
Point out seal failure. You know?
No.
Like, hold on, this window's broken over here.
It's on the outside.
Yeah.
But yeah,
and I will say, I will say, and not to blow smoke at you guys, but that was a very impactful speaker as well. But when I was listening to that, I was thinking to myself, and I'm not trying to blow smoke, but I was thinking to myself, that's exactly what Erik and his team are doing in our industry.
When I completely agree, and yes, I work for them, but I literally like looked over to Erik. I was like, you could have given that speech, because I look up to Erik just like how I look up to Gary Vee. And as soon as he was done speaking, I was like, you could have given that exact speech.
Absolutely.
And he's like, oh, all right. Well, like,
thank you.
This is
for pointing that out. And my takeaway was I want to look at the future. Like I told you, we're going to look at all of 25 and all the things that we already had planned and structured for the entire year, and go, let's look at it all through a fresh lens of just like, how can we affect the most people, but on an individual basis?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And I can't see a better target than that.
Really though.
Because that wrap that around everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Pat, what do you is there anything you're looking forward to potentially asking Gary Vee when you see him at WFCT next month? September 19th through the 21st in Orlando, Florida, and the 19th, co-sponsoring Gary Vee is Tint Wiz and Autobahn to speak at the International Window Film Convention in Tintoff. So as somebody who now gets to see Gary Vee in just a few weeks, what do you have in mind to ask him, or how do you plan to interact with him?
I mean, as I mentioned to you at the show, I mean, I've been very fortunate over time, just over the years, to spend time with Gary. So I'd actually, of course, I'll see him and say hi and things like that. But I'd really love the maximum number of people at WFC to get a chance to have some exposure to Gary. I've had plenty of exposure to Gary. I would like other people to have that experience, because I think it would be more so than me. Like I've had that opportunity over a number of years.
They're allowing you to, WFCT is allowing you to submit questions beforehand, and then they'll potentially ask Gary those questions. So assuming you are submitting a question right now, you're not taking up anybody else's experience, but just submitting a question. Is there something that you would ask Gary?
The biggest thing I would say, if I was just being completely selfish and asking him how he went from when he started VaynerMedia, and the reason a lot of the people were coming to work with VaynerMedia was because it was Gary. So VaynerMedia and Gary Vaynerchuk were interchangeable. People that were working with Vayner assumed they were going to be working with Gary. And that's what but at some point in time, as they've grown, he's had to move beyond that to where now I would say the vast majority of people that work with Gary VaynerMedia don't even have any interaction with Gary. That is a process, I would say, on a far lower scale. As we grow our business, it's tough because I know a lot of people in the industry. I know a lot of people we work with, and I never want to say no to anybody the same way Gary never wants to say no. But at some point, you run out of bandwidth, and how iMagnet can grow beyond every person we're working with feeling like they need to be working with me specifically. So if I was totally selfish and him and I had a chance to have a cup of coffee and really talk, I'd probably dig into that.
Flat Glass Joe, same question.
Man,
you
go ahead.
Give
Joe a minute to load up his brain.
You can ask him if he needs his windows tinted.
Yeah, I'll probably ask him if he got his house tinted.
Well, actually, let me change the question for you, Joe. When you got a chance to see Gary a couple days ago, and you had your 30 seconds, what did you say to Gary?
Well, I whispered in his ear that I'm going to be the champion for the WFCT, the event that he's going to be speaking at in Orlando. He's all, oh, awesome. So he gave me a high five.
So you said that in a way like you were joking, but I don't think you were
really
joking. That is what you said,
really
right?
Did. First, it was kind of hard to follow because it was right after.
You were worried about the handshake.
No. Mr. Carlos did his whole intro thing for him, right? That I think went viral. So I was holding the phone. So right after that, it was kind of hard to follow to get him off that cloud.
So what happened was when Carlos, the Texas Squeegee, went up to meet Gary, he did this grand entrance. Like Bruce Buffer style, captivated the entire crowd, the line that was waiting. Gary's jaw dropped.
All focus went on to Carlos.
Carlos had a sock on his hand,
a V-Friend sock,
and then Joe had to go up after that.
Yeah, so everything was still kind of cooling down, and I was like, dude, I can't follow that, but I'm just a big fan. And thank you for everything you do. I'm going to see you in Orlando, and I'm taking first place in 2 divisions, so I'll see you there. So you got it, boom.
Yes,
and that was it. So I'm going to stick to what I said, and I'm going to take first place, 2 different divisions this year.
Here's the key is if you do take first place, you can now take that picture and you could send it to him and you can go, look at this.
I'm gonna print it
motherfucker.
side
I
by
did
side.
this for you.
You could do whatever.
And hand
And
it to him.
next time you see him, whatever it is,
Boom.
but that's cool because you planted a seed,
No,
and
yeah,
now he'll be able to
awesome.
see whether it's worth continuing to talk to you or not based on if you fulfilled what you said to him.
No pressure. No pressure.
Kado, how about you? What did you tell Gary, or what are you going to ask Gary? I'm curious about both.
And what did I tell Gary? Not too much. I was very nervous. I was trying to smile, and I couldn't hold a smile, so I just closed my mouth, and it was awkward. But it's like I met my hero. So
You had your mouth closed. You're trying to talk and smile at the same time.
It was so bad. But I got out of it.
Oh, I was gonna say though, you just said you met your hero, Kado. I would say anybody that really loves Gary, you know, they always tell people, don't meet your heroes, you're bound to be disappointed. I'm telling you, don't worry about that with Gary. You know, he's everything that you think he is. I'm not just saying that because him and I go back, but you know, usually the rule of thumb is don't meet your heroes because you're going to be disappointed. That's not the case with Gary.
That's only in Hollywood,
Yeah.
not in
Yeah.
not in this case for sure.
I think that authenticity is the part of why meeting somebody like Gary is not disappointing, because he, like you said, you've known him for so long. Who he was then is who he is now, and who he will be and always will be. So you can meet him 1,000 times. He's the same person every time. He's authentic. So that's why Erik is saying Hollywood. Well, there's a lot of fake ass people in Hollywood. So if you meet him and you're like, oh wow, you're not.
I mean, typically in Hollywood, the person is literally acting. So like,
exactly,
you're acting as like Kramer, and then like you're seeing Kramer, and you're like, this is not
this guy?
the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's anyway.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to put down Hollywood. It's just acting versus truthing.
I will say a lesson that all of us could probably learn. I know I can from Gary as well, that as I've met him over the years, I've tried to identify like what is so attractive, like when you meet him personally, about that interaction. And more so than probably anybody I've met in my life, no matter the complete hurricane that's going on around him, whether it's 30 seconds or 3 minutes, he has the ability to laser focus on the discussion with you and be totally present, 100%, 150% right here, even though he's got 50 other things going on. And that I've always thought, like, that level of presence and really like the care to really give somebody that level of attention, I think is something we all can learn from. And probably about 8 years ago, one of the times I was in their offices, one of the things that stood out to me is he was leaving for the day. We were going to do a couple more hours in one of the conference rooms. And he had told me something earlier that day that I should do with my business. And as he was leaving, he was walking by the room that we were in, and he had a group of people around him asking him a bunch of questions as he was on his way to the elevator. So he's in the midst of like, I'm leaving for the day. Everybody's getting their final words in before I take off. And he broke from that crowd, came over to me and said, hey, that thing I told you earlier, that will work. You need to do that. And I was always impressed with that it was like that 15 seconds of him coming over to me and be like, hey, what we talked about earlier, do that. Like, that will work. And that level of just being like, while you have him, whether it's 15 seconds, 15 minutes, he's all in. He's all in. And I could learn from that. I mean, I can learn from having a better communication with other people by that level, trying to emulate that.
Did you do that, Patrick? What he said?
I did do that.
No.
I did do that. In fact, one of the things we talked about when I saw him this year was that what we talked about those many years ago is really starting to come to fruition. And he remembered, and he was pretty pumped about that. But I was probably slower to the gun than maybe some people would be, because it was, there was an element of risk to that. But I have followed that. It's just taken me like 8 years for it to fully come to fruition. But again, it wasn't about what he told me. It was more about, to what Kado said, I think that's what's always amazed me. Like when at VeeCon, you have thousands of people. Everybody wants to get a picture with Gary. There's even when he's doing the pictures and everything like that, there's chaos all around that. And his ability to like laser focus in on the person right in front of him. I've never met anybody like that in my life. Like, especially somebody that has that many other external things floating around, and he's willing to break away for that. And over the course of those 3 days, he broke away from that chaos and honed in on somebody individually. What, 1,000 times? 800 times? I don't know.
They stop him everywhere. Everybody, same thing, question after question. And good advice every damn time, I've been watching a lot of little shorts, people posting stuff, and every time he just lasers in, just like you said, and he's just like, he flips it, like gives them a different perspective. Like you see him analyze the question. He's like, okay, well, do this. And they're just like, oh my God, like I've never thought of that. Like so good.
The funniest part about that though is one of the things he said, like on his closing keynote, was like, so many of you people came up to me and were like, I already know what you're gonna say, because like over the 7 years that I've been watching him, I was trying to think for the last like 3 weeks, 4 weeks of like, what am I gonna tell Gary? What am I gonna tell Gary? Because if I go up and I'm like, you changed my life. Everybody says that. Everybody knows that. Hey Gary, what should I do with content? Post as much as you can. Okay, like what questions can I ask him that he hasn't already answered 1,000,000 times? And after you've watched his content for so long, you followed him, you're like, he literally just like, it's so basic.
Says it all the time.
Be happy, do this, post content. Here's the
So
blueprint.
simple.
Yeah, like
right.
it is simple. You just gotta have to do it.
Do it right.
Yeah.
So Erik, you turn your question on yourself.
Yeah.
You've asked the three of us now.
After that mile-long high five you did with him, what did you tell
Did you
him?
hear him bring up Inspector Gadget? Because that's why,
Yeah.
that's an Inspector
That's
Gadget
good.
thing. It's
That's
nostalgia.
Extend the arm.
My arm
Perfect.
extended.
Yeah.
What's the question? Which one's? Yeah.
What did you tell him?
Oh, what did I tell him?
Yeah.
So here's my takeaway from my personal interaction.
No. The question was, if you had a question to ask, what's the question you would ask? That's what we were talking about. I think.
Two questions. It was a double-sided one.
One first, and then the other.
Well, that's a good question, Patrick. And I don't have a question prepared for him yet. But when you so kindly introduced me to Nick, his right-hand man, which was a super, super genuine and friendly person that I'm so glad I got the chance to meet because of you. What he said was, when you see Gary next month, ask him any like off the wall random like question. The more like random or off the wall, and like obviously not like random like like Cody was mentioning theories that like oxygen's poisoning us, but like random like things like you're saying, not like he doesn't. I would imagine what I took from it was he doesn't need to hear that he's a legend anymore. He already knows that. He wants to provide value to you, so that's going to be by you asking him any question that legitimately can help you.
Exactly.
And that's what I took from it. So because of that, I've been pondering that, because I do want to take this opportunity to ask him a very selfish question that can, like he had said in his keynote as well, like, he's going down his path as well. So I want this opportunity because, well, I mean, it's an opportunity for everybody to ask a question. So given that I have a question, I don't want to throw a lob and say like, what would you say to companies that are having trouble hiring? Because I already know the answer because I've watched this content and I know what it is. Hire fast, fire fast. And like, like I get it, and how to build a team, and then don't be afraid to fire. And like, if you hire somebody, doesn't work out, it's not a reflection on your ability to hire. It's how you learn. And like, it's part of the process. And he gives examples. Like, I'm not going to lob him a softball question. I want to think of something specific. And that's why I asked you that question, Pat, because, yeah, you could say like, I don't want to take up his time, but like, everybody should take up his time. Everybody should have a question ready, like, because it's easy to say that, but when do you get another opportunity? I know you will get that,
but my point is, it's just like, I want as many people as possible to experience what I've had the ability to experience. And I don't feel like if it came down to a crunch time, I don't need another spot. Like I've had those spots, like, you know what I mean? That's what I was saying to you.
WFCT is they're literally saying like, hey, submit questions and we'll ask them, you know, potentially through it. So like they want questions, they want good questions. So I hope this helps frame the type of questions, because he's probably doesn't want to like, hey, how do you what should I do on social media? I post. Like, should I, you know, be really scared when I post? No. Like, you know, it's like those kind of questions. So I don't
I got my one question answered when I saw him. In addition to him and I catching up a little bit about my health and things like that, the one thing I asked him is I'm going on stage immediately after his keynote at WFCT, and I'm like, bro, you got to give me a shout out when you're leaving the stage. And he's like, done. So I'm like, I'm like, that's the only question I had for him. I'm like, I want the shout out, bro.
You should have him introduce you as he's walking off. Be like, hey,
that's
Patrick.
a plan. I think that is what he's.
That's what that's what I'm asking for. That's what I want him to do. I want him to be like, hey, if you're leaving this session, you need to, you know, that's what I'm asking for, is him to tee up my session. So that'd be awesome. So that's why I asked him. He told me no problem.
I'd like to answer the second question. Well, first, I'd like to point out, good for you for going for it, Pat, because it was obviously a question he was going to say yes to. If he said no, there's no way. Right. So he's going to say yes. So like you went for it, you asked for it, and you got the answer. So like fucking cheers to you, because if you didn't take that step, you'd almost be missing the grand point, right?
I want to touch on a story after.
Okay.
About taking those shots that lead to something.
Okay, so real quick, the takeaway that I got through meeting him was really through observing everybody else meeting him prior to me, right? So watching Joe and Cody or like hearing Cody and watching the video, and then seeing Carlos and then watching strangers go up to him, and everybody kind of approached him in a different way. Some people look super comfortable, some people were nervous, some people were
shaking,
visibly excited, and they asked questions, some people did. And like you watch that, and you watch how he adapted to everyone to try to make them feel comfortable. And then while I'm standing there, and you know, there was a certain amount of nerves, and I wasn't in line yet or anything, I was off to the side waiting to see Carlos embarrass himself. No, I'm just kidding. He fucking killed it. That was a joke. He fucking killed it. He legitimately killed it. So while I was, but it was a joke.
Carlos
while I was
also
watching,
Carlos memorized this like script literally within like 7 minutes.
Yes.
And then went up and like I
nailed it.
One
sentence. Yeah, nailed it.
It was like the fucking Eminem 8 Mile, like straight up.
That's right.
Like, you know.
And it panned out. I guarantee you guys will see it somewhere.
And you'll see it on Gary's feed, because I'm certain it's going to get posted. So you're going to see the Texas Squeegee on Gary's feed at some point, and you'll see this epic introduction that Carlos did that really did captivate the entire line, like a people and crowd. Everybody stopped. People were cheering midway through it. So he fucking killed it. And while I'm waiting for him to do that, you know, and I'm off to the side, and there's people in front of me and so on. Like somehow Gary makes eye contact with me, gives me like kind of this half smile and a wink. And I was like, man, this guy went as far as like to identify me in a crowd. And like, you know what I mean? It's like he really is standing there, not looking at the crowd, thinking about something else, but like present in the moment, trying to authentically interact with everybody on the level that they maybe need, whether it be a wink or a hug or advice or whatever it is. And watching that was the most amazing thing. And then when it was finally my time to get up there, and I extended my arm from 10 to 20 feet away, as to not miss his hand, as I do 99% of the time in any scenario like that, was awesome and truly like the best thing that probably could happen. He looked at me, looked at my shirt, and he goes, I'm going to see you in Orlando next month, aren't I? And I said, yeah. And the reason why that's so important to me was because it meant that he had built throughout this 3 days, or it was actually the second day, a brand recognition for Tint Wiz, because he had met, you know, Joe and Kado and Cody and so on. So he had met the whole team, not the entire team, but he'd met the whole team that was there. And the fact that he was recognizing the brand means a lot. And it's also a precursor to then seeing him at WFCT, and hopefully he'll be able to see his effects through, you know, everybody in this industry that he has affected at the event. And he can see the booth that I feel like he was a giant inspiration for, and he can see the community that he has tremendously affected and so on. So it just, to me, that was a perfect way it could have played out.
100%. Did you learn
I told you when I
extending your hand and doing handshakes?
No, I've gone on to miss the next 19 other handshakes
No,
afterwards.
you learned a trick.
Oh, to look at the elbow,
You
but
gotta
that
look at
doesn't
the
work
elbow.
for me. I'm
It
gonna
worked
try
3 times in a row with you guys. You tried it in the park. They practiced in
try
the
it.
parking lot
Not really.
afterwards, trying to get the handshake
It
down.
wasn't a perfect thought. I'm gonna try after this. I'm gonna try doing a magnet on my hand
Yes.
and a magnet on the other person's hand.
You got to meet them before.
You have
Set
to
it
meet them
up.
before.
Yeah.
I will say, because you guys weren't there when Kado was getting ready to go up and talk to him. I mean, hopefully, like Kado, once you had a chance to talk to him, you realized what I was saying. But Kado was a wreck. I mean, with a capital W, a nervous wreck, dude. And I was like, dude, just settle down, man. He was pretty like.
Can you
So
describe
that's
what
what
that means?
Yeah,
Can you
detail.
describe what you were seeing?
very, very nervous. Like he's going to get up there and freeze and not say anything. Like
was he doing?
worried about like
Nervous.
what's that?
What was he doing that made you know he was nervous? What were you observing?
He was verbalizing the fact that he was nervous. You didn't have to guess about the fact. He's like, dude, I'm freaking out. Like, I don't know. Like he was like, you didn't have to guess. He was telling you how nervous he was.
I thought he was gonna
The cool,
Well,
the cool thing about it is, I think what you brought up, Gary, or that you brought up, Erik, about Gary is Gary immediately, like when you meet him, he immediately puts you at ease. Like, you know, I mean, I'm sure there for a lot of people, there's a little bit of nerves, but he doesn't make you nervous. I mean, I think it's just like, it's, you know, so, you know, the next time you guys talk to him, I mean, I think there'll be a whole lot different feeling because I think, you know, I don't know. I mean, I'm so glad he's coming to WFCT. I know we've talked about that, but I'm just telling you guys, if you're wavering on going to WFCT or not, the chance to potentially interact with Gary and stuff like that is, I'm clearly a Gary fanboy, but he's one of the few people I met in my life that warrants the praise that he gets.
Yeah,
truly warrants the praise that he gets.
Sure.
Don't let your nerves get to you. Like I did, obviously, but I like when someone has such an impact. And to be clear, I had that same. I was telling Erik, and I think a lot of people know this, but I had that same experience with Erik because before I worked for Tint Wiz, and this was like 3 years ago, I think WFCT San Antonio, I got a Tint Wiz tattoo because I believe in the brand so much. And it was the first time that I was meeting Erik. And because Erik was like that Gary Vee level to me, I went to like, he walked up out of nowhere and I was like, fuck, like now I got to get my camera out and I'm like shaking and oh my God. And he comes up and I'm so happy to see him and meet him. And I'm like, hey, I want to show you something. And I'm trying to get the camera out and videotape our reactions. And then I watch it after he walks away. And I was recording the ceiling the entire time. So I'm happy that somebody else took my phone when I met Gary Vee, although they stopped recording halfway through. I did take a few videos afterwards. Gary Vee was walking around VeeCon a lot of times. And after that, I was so like comfortable.
Fives.
Yeah, I was like, oh, hey, bam, that was it. Yeah. So
for sure.
it was, those nerves were gone. That one time was gone. So. But yeah.
Cool.
What was the story you wanted to tell Kado?
Oh, okay. So yeah, so about taking shots and opportunities and just like kind of going with different you know, things in life. So yes, so manifestation as well, I think is a huge part of this. So day one, I'm walking up, I'm the first one there, I think out of all of us, and I'm just walking around you know, doing what I do when I go to events. And I saw these banners and I saw like VeeCon was so well organized in terms of like banners, I mean everything, but like the brand and everything was so sick. And I was like, I want to go home with one of these like flags or banners or like the covers on the fences. I want to go home with something like that and put it up in my garage. And so that was day one. I never want to be the person that just like takes something, or like, you know, when you go to concerts and people rip down posters and they run away with them and they steal shit. And like, that's not me. So if I couldn't get it, I'd accepted that. And that it is what it is. But last night after T-Pain played, which was incredible. That was a closing ceremony. I walked out and I waited at the gate for everybody to walk out. And then I went up to the security guy and I said, hey, how can I get my hands on one of the, like, when are they going to start doing teardown? And I can get my hands on one of these potentially. Had zero expectation of doing it. And he said, we're closing everything up right now, but if you come back tomorrow morning, that's when they start doing the teardown. Perfect. I went there this morning and it was all gone. I mean, there was still fencing and they're still taking down the stages and all that kind of stuff, but like there was no VeeCon related stuff that I could see, but there's still a fence around the whole thing. I saw some guys like sweeping stuff up and I was like, hey, can you get the attention of that guy over there with like a VeeCon badge? I don't know who he is, but like he's the one that might have the answer. So he's like, I don't know, I might lose my job, like trying to distract these guys. We're not associated. I was like, all right, cool. There goes my opportunity. I walked away. I respected it. And then another guy was doing a similar thing. And I was like, hey, can you get the attention of that guy over there? He's like, oh yeah, of course. Went over, got the guy. He comes over and I was like, I really want something memorable from this. I've been since day one wanting to get one of these. And he's like, I got you. Give me 5 minutes. Stay right here. And I'm on the other side of the fence, the 10-foot fences. He leaves for 5 minutes, comes back. He's got this big thing in his hand. And he's like, I don't know what it is. I don't even know if there's anything on this, but like, it looks like the same colors. I know how you feel. I love this kind of stuff. And he throws it over the fence. And I made sure to get it on video because I didn't want to, you know, people think that I'm stealing this shit. So I literally, he throws it over the fence and I grab it and I'm like, holy shit, I did it. I manifested this thing. It's happening. Go out. I put myself in awkward situations, asking people. And then we went in the parking lot and I did like an unboxing video kind of because I still had no idea what it was.
Just
so
to make sure it wasn't a dirty diaper or something.
Yeah. So Joe had just pulled up and
I brought some of those for you guys.
So Joe pulls up and I unveil it on the ground right in front of VeeCon. You can still see the stadium in the back. And I open it up to know that it's authentic. And it's literally the sickest. Like I could not have hoped for a better poster. Like it's like 40 feet long, like probably 20, 30 feet long.
Yeah, 15
by
by
like
40 or something like
yeah,
that.
like it is huge. And it says, welcome to VeeCon 2024. And I was like, holy fuck.
I did.
Like this is crazy. This is what it's all about all the time. So yeah, just taking shots, taking risks, putting yourself out there. Just every time you want to be like, I'm going to take the easy path and go this way, say, fuck you, like stop listening to that voice and go in the opposite direction, and great things seem to happen. And if they don't, they don't, but at least you tried. That's my cool ending story of VeeCon.
Awesome story.
Pat,
Yes.
closing comment, closing takeaway. Let's wrap this up with a bang.
A mic drop.
Well,
like how
I know you. I know you had mentioned. We would get back to it, but I did want to. I mean, to me, like I said, you could clearly see that it's meant a lot to me. And I mean, when I talked earlier about the humbleness of like both Gary and like Lewis and some other people, I think, like I said, to me, I feel like it really came across to me a lot this weekend that, and even like when I took you out, like other people I know within the Vayner ecosphere, if you will, seeing how what Gary does, and as somebody that's a leader of my organization, seeing what Gary does, how it trickles down to his entire team. You've got a couple people that I introduced both you and Kado to that are in the closest inner circle with Gary that you could be. One of the guys is responsible for the entire VeeCon show. The other guy is responsible for core relationships, all the key core relationships in Gary's life. And because Gary is so humble and because Gary leads with a servant attitude, you see those guys who are in very prominent positions within that organization that, again, in most other organizations would have a little bit of a, puffed up chest. And maybe that even when I introduced you to Nick yesterday, Erik, it's like zero of that. And it's like that flows from the top down. The only thing I could think is like Gary sets the tone by being like, man, if I'm going to be out in the sun for a couple hours a day just so I can say hi to as many people as I possibly can, who are you in my organization to think that you somehow attained some level of, I will do the most meaningless job, not the most meaningless, but I will do the most basic of jobs within the organization. And I think that sends a message to the rest of the organization, like, I'm not above this, so you sure as hell aren't above this, if that makes sense. And as a leader of a company, it really bleeds down to me to like, if you have a bad culture in your company, it's your fault. If you're the leader of your company and you have a bad culture in your company, it's your fault, because how you lead dictates that culture. I mean, Gary's got 1,500 employees now, and I have yet to meet one that's an a-hole. I have yet to meet one that's a jerk.
Yeah.
And some of the people like Andy and Nick, I think in a lot of other companies maybe would have a little bit of high, they're a little bit high on their own supply and a little bit of that attitude. Zero of it. Just, and that's very impressive to me and motivates me to be like, I can do better. I can be a better leader, of my own organization, of my family. And whatever the case may be, it's up to me to set the tone. And if things are broke, it's my fault. There's nobody to blame. If things are broke, it's my fault.
Joe,
Accountability.
Hit us with some wisdom, Joe.
Oh, 100%. Whatever he
No,
said.
not agreeing with him. That he was obviously right. Now,
definitely
closing
right.
statement from Flat Glass Joe separately.
What I take back from the show?
Hit us with something.
Man, for sure, just better communication all the way around, and not even so much in business, just every day-to-day life.
Communication, how?
Communication,
Like
better,
with
be
your
more
wife
available.
and friends.
Definitely with my wife too. Just be more present, for sure.
Be more present.
Be more present. Yeah.
Okay, that's too cliche. Is there anything you could dig a little deeper in that doesn't make us just feel like be more present? Because or what that actually means to you? Because you're not present. You're not really like one of these people that are always texting or like on the phone. Like you're not that's not really your personality. So like when you say be more present, how do you see that applying to you?
Really, just silent moment.
What was it?
No, just
drum roll.
Drum roll.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
I don't know. Just be more involved.
Be more involved. Okay, perfect.
Same shit. Same shit.
Perfect.
Yeah, just try to
like
just interact
volunteering
more. No, not so much volunteering. But
Patrick, can you help? Is there anything you can see that Joe's trying to say here? We can't get it out. What do you? Come on. What is it?
No, yeah.
Be more involved. No, finish
be
the
more
sentence.
involved, communicate. Like I do feel like just from everyone's speech, like communication is key, and running the business, the employees, and communication with my wife is probably one of the biggest ones I feel too. She's my biggest supporter, so any little thing, moves that I make, try to maybe incorporate her a little more into it, rather than
all the more
rather than just making these moves and then it not working out and taking the downfall for that too. So
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Are you gonna start posting more?
Kado.
Yes. I have to.
What's your takeaway? What's the final takeaway? Final words.
Final takeaway. I the same shit that I've been doing for the last 7 years. Do what you love. Take risks. If it doesn't make you happy, find something that makes you happy. Make it make sense. Obviously, like we talked about the money aspect of it, like it has to kind of be there. But there are micro things that you can do in between that, getting to the macro part of it, of being happy in your life, because I'm literally here right now in this moment on earth doing this because of all of those things. So that's it.
Beautiful. And I'll throw in a couple words, just mainly how it's a thank you, first of all, Patrick, for I was aware of Gary. I was a big fan for the last 9 years or so. And that's something I think you and I bonded over, but I don't know if I would have been at VeeCon if you hadn't, made that incredible gesture with the NFT and, had gone yourself and so on. So the second year when I was there, being seeing you there and Ronnie there and so on, like that was wonderful. And it was such a great experience that I knew this year I wanted more people to get to experience that. So I'm tremendously thankful that Kado and Joe, you traveled and you took time out of your weekend and away from your family and away from work, and Pat, and how the community and Cody and Carlos and everybody who came together to make attending the event better because of that community. And that's something that, not just in VeeCon, but with anything, it's kind of the power of community. I felt like it was just such a elevated experience because I was not only able to attend, but to attend with friends and community members. So thank you all for coming. And Pat, thanks for kind of being the genesis of this part of what we're doing.
Hey man, no, I told you yesterday via private text, but I'll share it here as we break. I mean, I genuinely view you as being somebody I look at as being like, not just of our industry, because I think you're that way as a human being, but I sort of joked around. I sent, not joking around though, sent Erik a post yesterday or a text and said, "You're the Gary Vee of our industry," and I really mean that.
Thank you.
You're the closest emulation I can think of to somebody I would say, is exhibiting the same traits I see in Gary in another person, and that would be you. And I'm not saying that just because we're on this podcast and we're friends. I truly mean it, man. You inspire me to be better.
Thank you. I think, and I really appreciate that. And that is, I think, how I could almost want to say, like, that's the power of being around each other, is we all, like, I get inspiration from everybody, and that's the beauty of it. So thank you. Thanks, Pat, for joining. I'll let you get back to Monterey Car Week and or
having a nap.
Yeah. And we are going to wrangle Joe into some content that we're creating for the upcoming event. So
can't wait.
Keep a lookout for some fun videos. Joe always makes the cringiest of videos before the competitions, where he, proclaims his future victory. And then last year it worked out. You took it. You took home first place in the Deco. You took home first place at Tinter Battles. You took home second place the year before in the Deco. You never got anywhere near first, second, or third in the flat class for WFCT, but this could be your year.
I made it to the finals.
You made it to the final. How many? 3?
One time.
But you made it to final 3 or final 10.
No, it was 7, I think.
Final 7. So final 10. You made it to number.
Should have just left it at the finals.
Out of like 100.
All right, but anyway,
it was pretty good.
Keep a lookout for Joe's hilarious content. And everyone, thanks for listening or watching. And Pat, love you. Thank you it was great seeing you, and thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Pat.
Thanks, man. Love you guys. Take care.
173 is over. Bye.
All right. See ya.